On today's episode of the Wild Party Podcast, I share an inspiring conversation with Shel Horowitz, a true pioneer in ethical entrepreneurship and sustainable marketing. Shel's the founder of Going Beyond Sustainability and the best-selling author of Guerrilla Marketing to Heal the World. For over 40 years, Shel has been helping businesses identify profitable opportunities that also solve some of the world's biggest challenges. In this episode, Shel and I talk about the power of extraordinary people to create extraordinary change, the difference between sustainability and regeneration, and how your business can do well by doing good. He also shares brilliant case studies, practical tips, and a whole lot of inspiration. If you've ever been skeptical about whether a business can truly be a force for good, this conversation is for you. Let's get the party started. Welcome to the Wild Party Podcast, where we celebrate the visionaries behind vegan, ethical, and sustainable business. In each episode, we'll dive deep into their journeys, uncovering the why behind their mission-driven business. I'm your host, Stephanie Lahart. Tune in with me for passionate discussions about overcoming challenges, innovative marketing strategies, and the power of using business as a force for good. So whether you're an entrepreneur seeking guidance or a conscious consumer wanting to support impactful brands, join us as we explore the stories behind the businesses that are changing the world for the better. Let's get the party started. And today I want to welcome to the show Shel Horowitz, who is the founder of Going Beyond Sustainability and a best-selling author. One of his books that I personally can't wait to read that is new is called The Guerrilla Marketing to Heal the World. I mean, with a title like that, Shel helps businesses find unique, specific environmental and social equity profitability opportunities for their organization. If it sounds like a very big promise and a mouthful, you are right. But after learning as much as I did about Shel, I know that he is the man that can do it. Because let me tell you, Shel, you gave me the best pitch ever in email. It was so good. I want to read it to our listening audience right now. When I put out the word that I needed podcast guest, Shel immediately responded and he emailed me with this question. He said, "Would you like an episode helping businesses understand how they can benefit by developing profitable products and services that help to turn hunger and poverty into sufficiency, racism and othering into equity, and war into peace, pandemics into global health, and catastrophic climate change into planetary balance?" Shel, with a question like that, my answer is absolutely yes. Please tell me in 45 minutes how we can do all of that, because my goodness, you have been at this since you've been about 12 years old. Welcome to the show, Shel. Please solve all of our problems.
Well, thanks, Stephanie. I'll at least put you on the right track to solving all those problems. I wish I could do the whole magic wand in 45 minutes. But the reality is that when we look at these enormous problems, we see one thing in common, and it's something that is fixable, and that's that they're resource issues. So we look at who is getting what, who is trying to take what from other people, how can it be divided more fairly, and all of a sudden, a lot of the problems seem like they're not so big and scary anymore. And it was a while to come to that, of course. I didn't, come to my first peace demonstration at age 12 and think, oh, I've got the solution for the whole world. And I still don't have the solution for the whole world, but I have a piece of it. And I really do think that one of the reasons I've chosen to focus a lot of my activism in the business community is that businesses, number one, have the resources to do it in a way that the average activist may not have. And number two, they have more to gain because they can actually monetize their commitment to environmental and social good. And not only that, but they can avoid, I'll call it anti-monetizing, the absence of those commitments in a society that more and more often demands it.
Yeah, that's amazing. So you did mention that you went to your first peace rally at 12. What was that rally about? Because I'm going to share with you my very first experience in a second.
Okay, it was, I know the date because it was a big national demonstration, and when I confirmed it on Google, yep, that's the date I remember. It was October 15th, 1969. I was 2 months shy of turning 13, and I went to a demonstration against the Vietnam War at what was then New York University's Uptown campus. It is now Bronx Community College in New York City. And one of the speakers said, "The Vietnam War is an undeclared war." And I hadn't known that. And I had been raised a good little social studies student, no checks and balances in the three branches of government. Boom, it all came crashing down. And I started questioning absolutely everything. And then a few months later came the first Earth Day, reinforcing that there are better ways to do things and opening my eyes to more on the environmental side. So those two things really made a big difference in the intervening 50 plus years.
Yeah, so even at that age, you're like, hey, I know that I can make a difference in this world, even though I'm 12 going on 13. And I think that's amazing. And like I just said a few minutes ago, I had a similar eye-opening experience when I was in my teens. I was actually about 14, 15. And for me, someone had handed me a PETA magazine. At that point, PETA was all just print because, the digital age had not hit us yet. This was back in the 80s. And when I learned what was going on in animal research and how we were treating animals, I had never seen information like that before. And I was like, oh my God, this is horrific. Why is this happening? And it was shortly after that I went to my very first rally. It was a march on Washington that PETA had organized. And I had a similar experience and reaction to you where I was like, hey, I don't like what's going on. And I think I can be the one to change it. And I think that's a really pivotal moment for people in their lives. And you seem to then go on and create an entire career about it. In fact, now I've been told that you're called the transformpreneur. So tell me a little bit now about how you're helping businesses really change the way they're doing things. How you're helping them to identify profitable opportunities that align with the sustainability and social change.
Okay, well, transformpreneur is a word I coined about, no, I don't know, 10 years ago. It's, of course, a combination of transformational and entrepreneur. So, entrepreneurs that are in business to succeed both economically and, shall we say, spiritually, globally, are in a very good position to succeed because study after study, I looked at a lot of information when I was writing my 4 books on this topic. And every single study, every single one showed that businesses that really have a core DNA that includes making the world better are better positioned for success. They have an easier time attracting customers. They have an easier time attracting workers. And not only that, but when a worker does leave, they're likely to say, hey, I know somebody who'd be really perfect for this position. Should I give you their resume? So they'll kind of act as your unpaid sales force on the consumer side and the unpaid recruitment agent on the employer side. So your costs go down for that. Your costs go down because you're treating your waste in the right way. You're not throwing away stuff that could be used somehow. Your resource costs are lower because you don't need as much fuel, you don't need as much raw materials to manufacture whatever it is you might be manufacturing or distributing or selling, and on it goes. And we can make this, Stephanie, a little more concrete by looking at some specific examples. So there's a company I love to talk about called D-Light. It's lowercase d period light, Light, and they sell small solar lanterns, LED bulbs, in places where the dominant lighting is either no lighting at all or it's kerosene. I'll tell you about kerosene. Kerosene is nasty. It's toxic. It's highly flammable. Many people have been injured or even killed in kerosene fires. It's obviously there's an ongoing cost. You have to keep buying it, buying it, buying it. It's a fossil fuel. It's dirty. It pollutes. So instead of that, to have a solar light in your house that gives actually better quality light, never needs more fuel, just needs to be exposed to the sun. Um, and the thing this company does that's so intriguing is that their business model is You pay for the lamp, but you pay on time payments, and your time payment is approximately what you were paying for kerosene every month. So let's say if you're in, some country like Rwanda, and maybe you're making $20 a month as a subsistence farmer, and you're paying $2 a month for kerosene, and then you buy this lamp, and for 10 months you pay the same $2 you were paying before, and then after that you're paying zero, you've just added 10% to your disposable income. You're able to see better. So maybe you start a cottage industry of some kind in the hours when it's too dark to farm, and you start selling some product that's different from yams or potatoes or spinach or whatever it was. Your kids can see better to do their homework, so they get better grades and ultimately better jobs. And you've built yourself a ladder out of poverty with a $20 lamp. I think that's great. Uh, Another one of my favorite examples is a coffee roaster named Dean's Beans in Orange, Massachusetts. Dean is a wonderful guy. He is an ex-labor lawyer, and he decided he could do more good in the world with a coffee business than he could as a labor lawyer. So in 1993, he started this company, which he has since divested of and given to his employees. But the thing about Dean Sycon is that every single bean he roasted from 1993 until his now successors in the company uh, to this very day was at least fair trade, was organic, coffee and cacao, and was funding community-led development schemes in the coffee lands. So in a village where he was sourcing his coffee, he would say, okay, I've got this pot of money for you. You will run the program. I get to veto it, but you design the program, and I can provide some technical expertise and funding. What would you like to do with that money? So like one group in Rwanda, I think, did a anti-women's violence project. Another group somewhere else dug a well. Water is such a life force that we can talk about water for a long time and how we squander it in the United States. I think our descendants may forgive us for the oil squander, but not the water squander. Um, and so on and on it goes. There are just actually probably thousands of companies doing this kind of good in the world. Some of them we've heard of, Patagonia. Um, Others are like Dean's Beans. If you're not in the New England area, you probably never heard of them.
Yeah, it is fascinating because I think we're hearing more and more about businesses that are trying to integrate some of, let's call, the do-gooder side to business. But you were really I mean, you were at the forefront of this even way back in the day. So like, let's just go back for a second because we just did a huge leap from like 12 years old to the Shell we now see in front of us. So when you started on your journey of life and you started realizing that there were these inequalities in the world, and your career started, what was your initial career? What were you doing back in the day?
Well, I thought I would be a working journalist, and I got a rude awakening when I finished college in 1976 and discovered that not only were there no journalism jobs at that time, but that there were more people in J school than there were working journalists. So I thought, well, that isn't going to work too well. I did some freelance, actually. I did a lot of freelance writing in the early 80s, but I realized pretty quickly that I should be writing copy for people who are not news outlets, but who need stuff written. So book covers, press releases, marketing plans, and gradually that evolved into a more strategic look at marketing and things like helping people find good partners, and on it went. And then, of course, I had the epiphany. And maybe we should talk about how the epiphany came to be, because that's kind of interesting. And for those who will see this on video, a little show and tell here. Um, going to walk my computer over to the window, and you can see Mount Holyoke behind the farm that I live on, which is the mountain for which the college 3 miles away is named. And the mountain next to Mount Holyoke in November 1999 was where a developer announced that he was going to put 40 McMansions visible from the Summit House at the top of Mount Holyoke, which routinely runs wins the best place to take an out-of-town visitor award. And you can see 4 states from the top, even though it's only 942 feet. Um, and so I was the one who said, no, you're not. And I started a movement called Save the Mountain. And I thought, oh, 20 people will come to the first meeting. We'll get an active core of 5, and we'll make the developer's life uncomfortable enough that in about 5 years he'll go away. Well, 70 people came to the meeting. 30 more called or emailed and said, I'd really like to be involved. It's not a good day for me. We had an active core of about 35. We organized on so many fronts. There was stuff going on that I didn't even know about as the founder of the organization. And in fact, the way we won was through one of the things I hadn't known about, which was that we had attracted very early on the attention of a local philanthropist. And the developer didn't actually own the land yet. He had a buy-sell agreement. And so we hired a team of lawyers that negotiated with the property owner and with the state of Massachusetts to take that land over in a friendly eminent domain taking, which took 13 months to work out. And then we won because we bought the land out from under the developer, and this woman gave it to the park. And so that land became parkland instead of 40 trophy homes. And
That's
that,
incredible. So, I mean, you already saw again, it's like, hey, I really do have power in this world. I can make a difference. So, when did you start really deciding I'm going to work with businesses and help them to optimize their systems to also make these changes for good?
yeah, well, it was right after that because I had not planned a plan B. What happens if we win? So the organization basically fell apart because we had accomplished our objective and I hadn't plugged people into the next thing to save. So I've learned in any future organizing, I will always know what to do if you achieve victory.
Yeah.
But I didn't then in 2000. So that campaign went from November 1999 to December 2000, and then that land was state property and undevelopable. And in the meantime, by the way, we passed three different bylaws in town that's going to make it very, very difficult for anybody else to build on a mountain in town. And, stuff like that. We had the interesting thing about that campaign is we had every sector of society. The developer and his five friends were like the only people in favor of this. And everything else, it was really a consensus movement. I would go to town hall, to the town clerk's office to get some copy of some document. And she'd say, well, I'm supposed to charge you for this, but since it's for Save the Mountain, wink, wink. And she was somebody who, on pretty much everything else, was a political opponent. But that's how unified we were. Everybody, these were the iconic mountains that people think of when they think of our valley. So I really harnessed that. So then I got to be thinking, okay, this campaign was successful, and it's really nice to have victories once in a while, I must say. Um, that used everything I knew from marketing. What could I take from the activist world back to the business world? And that's when I came up with the values idea that when businesses express the values of their community, I had a thesis that would be a good business practice. I started digging around and I turned out to be right. And so in 2003, I published the first of those four books. It was called Principled Profit, Marketing That Puts People First. And that, evolved into Guerrilla Marketing Goes Green. And then that again evolved into Guerrilla Marketing to Heal the World, each time adding another several tens of thousands of words and expanding more of the social justice stuff. And that's really kind of when I made the pivot. Before that, I was a fairly ordinary small business marketing agency, except that I concentrated on things that a lot of people don't like to do, like press releases. I happen to love writing press releases, and I do them very differently. I don't do the electronic privacy expert releases new book. My headline for that client was, "It's 10 o'clock. Do you know where your credit history is?" And then the book didn't even show up till the third paragraph. So I have fun with that. But it's, this expansion, this broader strategic piece really came out of the organizing of Save the Mountain.
Yeah, that's amazing. And as we, especially now, it's like with our short attention spans, you really do have to grab people with that headline or they'll never get even any farther. And I mean, you're writing this a couple of years ago, but now with social media, everything's so accelerated. So tell us, how does guerrilla marketing really differ from traditional marketing in this space?
Okay, guerrilla marketing, that's spelled Guerr, by the way, it's not Gor. Um, that is a concept that my co-author, J. Conrad Levinson, came up with in 1984, which coincidentally was the year that I was writing my first marketing book. But mine didn't do nearly as well as his did. And it's the idea that you can be quick and nimble, you can get in and out of a situation sometimes before the big dogs even notice you, and that it's you look for, to some degree, you look for the zinger. You look for the way of reframing things so the focus is on you. One of the classic examples he cites is of the person with a small local furniture store who all of a sudden two huge furniture chains opened up next to him, one on either side. A big sale, big sale. So he hangs a sign saying main entrance on his door, right in the middle.
Very clever. I love that. And it's so interesting to hear you talk about this stuff because you were really working on these ideas before it became part of the mainstream consciousness. Like we do hear a lot more now about businesses that, have some environmental impact or trying to go green or sustainable, whatever. But here you are, back in the day, the, 70s, 80s, 90s, really developing these messages. So how were you able to translate that kind of idea and messages to businesses back then when they weren't really thinking about it? Because Shell, you were at the forefront. Like you were doing this before any of us even thought of it, certainly before I launched the Wild Party podcast. So, where inside you were you just like, hey, this is something important that businesses can also take ownership of and make part of their organization. Where did that come from for you?
Well, I must say it's nice to not be marginalized anymore for this. And in like 1970s, these were really foreign concepts to the business world. But now we have this track record of seeing how things work. And we see, for example, that solar panels, which cost a fortune in the 80s and gave very poor efficiencies, now the cost per kilowatt, even though inflation has been huge since then, the cost per kilowatt is actually lower. We understand technologies. We're beginning to learn after the 40-year failed experiment of the so-called Green Revolution, which was really the chemiculture revolution. And it had a very short-term benefit and did a huge amount for world hunger, but then the earth started fighting back. And, so people now started focusing, not now, but, some decades ago, started focusing on, okay, well, how do we make organic food that can scale up? How can we grow stuff that tastes as good, looks as good, has all the nutritional benefit, doesn't have the chemical bath, and can sell in market quantities? That was something we didn't know in the 70s. I don't know if you remember what an organic apple looked and tasted like back then. It was not a pretty sight or a pretty taste. So those sorts of innovations have really made a shift. And also, let's face it, we look around, we see a world in trouble and a world fighting back. The planet has said, I've had enough of you guys. Get your act together or we'll leave it to the cockroaches. So there's all of these factors coming together. And of course, we have, at the time that we are recording this in the early days of the second Trump administration, we have the hard and painful lesson that we cannot rely on any help from the federal government. In fact, we're going to be spending a lot of our time in damage control on that area. But the genie's out of the bottle. They can't put it back in.
Yeah.
That they can try to say it's illegal to use the words diversity, equity, equality. We'll come up with some other terms. It'll take them 5 years to figure that one out and ban it. And by then, hopefully, there'll be a different administration. Um, he says, Bill, drill, baby, drill. And we say solarize, baby, solarize. And not just solar, but water and wind and geothermal and all the other cool, non-polluting technologies. And by the way, nuclear power is not one of those. Do not let anyone tell you that nuclear power is clean and green. My first book was about that. I re-researched it in 2011 after Fukushima because a Japanese publisher wanted to bring that book back from 1980. And there is nothing new or good about that technology.
Yeah, you've brought up so many good points, and you're right. It's like they can outlaw as much as they want, but the movement is there and people's consciousness has been raised. So we can change the terms, we can play all the games you want, but you're really focused on with your business now going beyond sustainability. With businesses, yes, going beyond sustainability is the name of the company now. How specifically do you work with businesses and companies to help them make this, environmental impact and sustainability more the core of their organization or working in some kind of societal change? Like, how do you work with businesses to make this happen?
Well, I look for the low-hanging fruit, and usually there is some. It might be something as simply as swapping out the incandescent bulbs for LEDs, or it might be looking at There's a story that may or may not be real. It might be apocryphal that in the early days of the space program, the US spent millions of dollars to develop a pen that could write in zero gravity, and the Russians gave their cosmonauts pencils. So sometimes it's a matter of thinking about what is the real goal here. The Simon Sinek start with why. What are you trying to accomplish? Is what you're doing really the best way to do that, or is there something better? So that might mean rather than thinking about, oh yeah, I should rope caulk my windows, you might do what Amory Lovins did and think, do I really need a furnace if I build a really green house that stays cool in the summer and warm in the winter? Maybe I can save that $6,000 or $10,000 and use that for the solar lighting and the other green features. So he built his house in Aspen, just outside Aspen, Colorado, a place whose entire industry relies on cold weather. And he built a really comfortable house in 1983 or 84 that doesn't need a furnace, doesn't have a furnace, and whose energy features paid for themselves in under a year. So he's now had 40 years of living with no energy bills, basically, because of decisions made back then. Think about what our energy picture would be looking like if all of our buildings, let's say since 1990, because it would take a few years to get this thing noticed, had been built since then with that kind of attitude. In terms of building siting, in terms of harnessing the sun, in terms of the right amount of insulation. And wow, we wouldn't have gone to war in Iraq, I think, for one thing. Um, and we wouldn't be tearing up the landscape and putting in these horrible, massive leaky pipelines across native territories. So everything's connected. You've been a PETA activist, so you know that is the treatment of animals is directly connected to what we choose to eat. And I've done a little bit of the math, and I can figure out that you are a lot older than you look, and your great complexion probably has a lot to do with your being a vegan. I'm not a vegan, I'm a vegetarian, but I've been a vegetarian since I was 16 in 1973, and I raised two vegetarian children.
I also went vegetarian when I was 16, and now I've been vegan for the past 10 years. Thank you for the compliment. First of all, it's very good lighting that you're seeing me on now. I am 54. I'm not wearing makeup if you guys are watching the video. But yes, I do think a lot of it does have to do with veganism, but also I'm very conscious of my choices. So I do like look at my daily choices like you. Like, when I'm drinking, when I need a beverage, do I really need to drink a formulated thing in a bottle, or can I just drink water, right? So just by making those simple choices, I think you can make smarter choices. And I think you've proved that over and over, not only in how you live, but in your career as well. And I love that you're now helping businesses. So tell me, what do you think are some of the misconceptions that businesses have about sustainability or about embracing sustainability? Like, what would be some of the helpful hints you could give them? Because we can
Okay.
all do something.
Sure, absolutely. First of all, let's think beyond sustainability. This is why I named my company Going Beyond Sustainability. Sustainability is keeping things from getting worse. Regenerativity is making them better. So let's, again, keeping that end goal in mind, it's not enough to just keep things from getting worse. We want to get to the point where we have a net zero economy that does not use fossil fuels, that does not use nuclear, that uses the clean technologies and the clean insulation and the clean conservation methods. So that's one thing. Another is to think systemically about what you're really trying to accomplish and how you might do that. And keep your eyes on the really impressive cutting edge technologies that are out there in every area you can think of, green chemistry, green construction, but don't feel like you have to do it all at once.
Hmm.
Okay, I became vegetarian in 1973. I joined my first food co-op in 1975. But I mean, I still hear, even all these decades later, I do not have a 100% completely organic diet. I would say my diet is 80%, 90% organic. Um, but also think in terms of the community aspects. A business is a system that's part of a larger system, that's part of a larger system, that's part of a larger system, that's part of a planetary system, that is then part of a cosmos system. So that's going in one direction. Then you can also reverse it down and go molecular if you want to look the other way. It's all related. And the science is fascinating, and there are people out there who have made the science understandable. I like to think that I've done that to some extent. That taking these big abstract concepts and making them relevant, and also to remember that change is accomplished by ordinary people. This is really crucial. Erica Chenoweth and I forget her, Maria Stanley, I think is her co-author. They determined that 3.5% of the population actively engaged in building something better will succeed. Just 3.5%.
You know what? That's such a powerful statement. I want to repeat that again. Change, what did you say? Change is something that is accomplished by ordinary people.
Think
That
about
is
it.
that
What
is so true. And even with our own choices, like making choices like I'm going to change my diet or I'm going to choose a glass of water over a manufactured product. People don't even realize, one of the major causes of greenhouse gases is the animal farming industry. Like we
Mhm.
have no idea where our food comes from anymore. We're so removed from stuff. So, doing your own research really and just being aware and understanding that your small change in your own life makes a greater global change. That's huge. So, because you're such a forward thinker and you've been through so much, Shel, tell me, what industries do you think right now have the greatest potential to lead sustainability into the next decade? Like, who do you see that could really make a change for us?
Construction, agriculture, education, probably medicine. I'm not so sure about that. But there's pretty much any energy you can investigate, you will find that it can be a leader. And again, the ordinary people thing. What's more ordinary than an electrician working in a shipyard or a seamstress? Well, when you answered that the shipyard electrician is Lech Walesa, who threw the Soviet government out of Poland and became its president, and the seamstress is Rosa Parks, who incidentally was a trained activist. People think that she did something arbitrary, spur of the moment. No. She was a veteran of the Highlanders School, which was an activist training school in Tennessee. She was very active in her local NAACP chapter, and she was not the first. In fact, just about a year earlier, a teenager named Claudette Colvin, I think was her last name, did the same thing. She got arrested and was thrown off the bus, but the civil rights leaders decided that she wasn't the role model they wanted to really put in front of the public eye, that Mrs. Parks, mother and homemaker and respected citizen, would be a better candidate to rally around. I question the wisdom of that decision, but there you have it. So what Rosa Parks did was absolutely wonderful, but it wasn't something that she just decided to do right there.
You know what? It's true. I actually did hear that story before, so I was aware of that. But I think it's a really great example about how crafting a message can really lead the whole campaign towards change because we do want to connect with people on a deeply personal level. So by, raising Rosa Parks up and saying she is this person, people are like, oh, she's just a normal person like me, which she is. But you're
Mhm.
right. She was very intentional in her actions. And again, going back to we can all be very intentional in our own personal actions and then take them forward into business to make that grand global change. So then people will look back and be like, wow, Shel and Stephanie really were onto something there. They didn't just stumble upon it. And, I empower everyone listening to the podcast that's out there, look around your life and see what kind of smaller changes you can make or what you could be involved in that could create that bigger change because everybody could be a part of it. And then looking to leaders like Shel, who's been in this industry for so long, helping businesses, and then of course sharing all of his information through your wonderful books. I'm really interested to talk a little bit about your Guerrilla Marketing to Heal the World book. Tell me a little bit about your thought process with that and what you're hoping people would get out of that.
I will do that, but I want to take a moment to just talk to the consumers who don't own businesses in your listenership, because you have enormous power as consumers. Um, you can make decisions to buy only fair trade coffee and cacao, for example, and cacao in particular. Non-fair trade chocolate is basically contributing to child slavery.
Hmm.
So look for that symbol. Um, Boycott companies that you disagree with. I canceled my subscription to the Washington Post. I don't shop at Amazon. I don't even shop at Whole Foods, which I used to before Amazon bought it. Um, um, but also at the same time, sorry, I lost my thought for a sec. Um, recognize that you can also organize boycotts. So if a company is feeling heat because the government wants to take away the good things they're doing for disenfranchised minorities, you can organize 20 people to go in one day and say, "Hi, here we're here to shop because we like what you were doing there. We're here to support you, and we're telling our friends and posting it on Facebook too."
Yeah, and that's even more accessible now because of social media. I mean, back in the day with you and Save the Mountain, you thought maybe 5 people would show up and 75 people showed up. So there's always that power of building that movement, no matter what it is that you really want to do. So tell us then again with the Guerrilla Marketing book, give us a couple of tips of how you think businesses can use guerrilla marketing specifically to help further their message for good.
Well, I think we can look at a company called Markel, which is a household paper products company in the Northeast United States, toilet paper, paper towels, napkins, that sort of thing. They went recycled before you and I were born. They went recycled in 1950. Company was founded in 1939, and they didn't tell anybody. They forgot to tell anybody. And I can kind of understand that in the Leave It to Beaver era, it might not be considered cool that you're wiping your tush with somebody's rejected junk mail. But, by about 1975, it would have been a marketing advantage to start telling. And they actually went bankrupt. And then they brought in a turnaround CEO. And the first thing he did was like, "You've been 100% recycled since 1950 and you didn't tell anybody?" So he changed the whole packaging around. "You can save 1 million trees." And they went from being bankrupt to being the leading brand of recycled paper products in the country. Now, mind you, this is a brand that was only available in the Northeast, and they were outselling, for example, national brands like Seventh Generation. So that is the power of speaking your message. I do a whole thing on green messaging. I have a whole like hour-long talk that I do on that. And you really look at marketing differently to the different audience segments. So for example, you and I would be in the deep green category. We make our decisions based largely on the good for the earth when we're going out to buy something. Then there are the lazy greens, people like my mother-in-law. When I stayed at her house when I was touring the Markel paper plant in New Jersey, just outside of New York City, um, she says to me in her Queen's accent, "I always buy Markel because it's recycled." Well, actually, she always buys Markel because not only is it recycled, but it's right next to the Scott and the Kleenex brands on the same shelf in the supermarket she's already in. But she'll do the right thing when it's convenient. And then you've got the non-greens or the anti-greens, the Donald Trumps, if you will. And with them, you sell strictly on the benefit to them. You sell on selfish things. This is the most comfortable slipper you've ever had, and it's because we use this natural alpaca sourced from free-ranging alpacas in the wild maize fields of the Andes. It's whatever. But you show them the benefit, and then you connect that benefit to something good in the world so that maybe it opens their eyes just a little crack. And over time, maybe they'll move from being an anti-green to a non-green to a lazy green, and maybe even to be a crusader like you and me.
I love how you just categorize that. So that's the anti-green, the light green, the non-green, and what was the other one? What are we,
The
the
deep green.
evergreens?
The deep green. I
The
like
Tariq
evergreen.
greens.
Deep.
I love that terminology because that really does help you to categorize these different, I'm just going to say styles of living or slash consumerism. Because it's true, when you speak to somebody's personal values, then you can help to communicate your message more effectively, which is really important when you're differentiating yourself in the market. So, going back to how you help businesses then, what if you start working with a business and they come to you and they say, "We want to build a message that's going to make people think or help people think help people to see how we're really, involved in sustainability. or in, environmentalism. And then you look at what their actual business is and you're like, wow, you really don't have anything in there. How do you help them then maybe convert or build systems in that are going to then fulfill that message without it being greenwashing? Because
Yeah,
we never want to get stuck with the greenwashing tag because that really
definitely.
kills the business.
And well, it should. Yeah. So I would look at, okay, again, what is the goal? How are you getting there now? How could you get there better? Are you willing to make the commitment? And let's see, here's 5 easy things that'll set you on the road. I don't want you to be claiming you're a green company, but you can say you're going greener. And then the money you save, the money you make from doing that, we can make a plan to invest deeper. And I am not a techie, but I know people I could talk to who's like, if they want to spend a few million, I know people who could help them spend that to really make some significant system level improvements. I'm a marketing guy. I work with words and not machines. But um, I don't know how to go under the hood to do more than like change the oil on a car. But um, the nice thing is, just like in activism, you partner with people who bring complementary skills. In business consulting, you also do it. So, like for example, I have somebody I can refer people to who looks at their waste streams and gets paid as a percentage of what he saves them in their waste costs. How cool is that?
Yeah.
No
That
risk
is
to the
pretty cool. That is pretty cool. So, I wonder now then, with I feel like we almost have information overload. So, people that are now in the entrepreneur space and they're deciding what they want their business to be or what they want it to look like, what advice do you have for these young sorry, what advice do you have for these young entrepreneurs and business owners who really want to build a business that balances profit with like social impact? Like what does
Well,
that
first of
look
all, I'm
like?
going to object to the term balancing. I'll say combines, because this is not an either or, it's a both and.
I love
And
that.
mindsets are mindsets matter a lot. One of the reasons we won the Save the Mountain campaign is because I went in there believing that we would win. My timetable was off. I thought it would take 5 years. It took one. But um, because I went into it with that mindset, we were successful. Because when I was in my one and only arrest at Seabrook in 1977, the 1,414 of us that got arrested went in knowing that we were going to stop this plant from being built. We didn't actually. The plant went online, but we started a national movement, and nothing else basically went online for 40 years. All of the 1,000 nuclear power plants that Nixon wanted to build, it topped out at about 110, and it's now somewhere around 90 something in the United States. And it's almost impossible to build a nuclear power plant these days, and I hope to keep it that way. We're actually bringing Clamshell Alliance back from a 40-year sleep. But if you go in with the attitude that you can win, your chances of winning are much, much greater. The civil rights movement is a great example. And they knew that this was going to be decades of work. And, the civil rights movement didn't start in 1954 with Brown versus Board of Ed. It probably didn't even start with the Dred Scott Supreme Court decision the wrong way in 1890 something, or with the Civil War. It's these things sometimes manifest slowly for centuries and suddenly get momentum, and then sometimes they bring down governments in days. Arab Spring. It's just, who would have thunk?
It's true, and it's there is something to be said for really knowing your history because you're right. When we look back, we can see how things truly change. So, with that said, I have to tell you, Shel, your email did not overpromise. Everything you said in your email, you certainly delivered on this, and I feel like I could talk to you for hours. But just in the method of a time constraint here, because we do have one for this podcast. I just want you to give us one key takeaway to anyone listening to this podcast that you want them to remember about what it means to kind of live in this world and be, involved in sustainability and ethical business. Give us a key takeaway there. What can they do?
The key takeaway is that whatever they choose to do, they should choose to do something. Don't just sit there and let the world roll over you. And by the way, I have some resources for people. If you go to goingbeyondsustainability.com/pound freebies, I think the F is capitalized. You'll get a whole bunch of stuff. You'll get some nice excerpts from the Guerrilla Marketing to Heal the World. You'll get a lovely little 111 tips to go green in your own life that are easy and free or cheap, and a bunch of other resources. And also, all you have to do is request a half an hour with me and tell me that you listening to Stephanie's show. And instead of the usual 15-minute comp call, I'll give you 30.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much, Shel. And I really, really, recommend people that are listening to this podcast or thinking about a business, need maybe a little bit of guidance along the way. Please reach out to Shel. His website, Going Beyond Sustainability, is a wealth of knowledge, as he is. And, I think it's just something that really speaks to your experience, of generosity and giving, that there's just so much that people can learn from you, seeing how you have been through this through so many steps in history, from the beginning to where we are now. And that leads me to our final question, Shel, and then I swear I'll let you go. But what is in the future for Shel Horowitz? What are you working on next?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked because I'm really excited. I am in the very early stages of writing a book proposal for book number 11. I haven't settled on a title yet, but it's going to be on being an activist at 60 and above, or if I end up partnering with AARP at 50 and above. Um, so I'm hoping to partner with Third Act, which is for 60 and above. And I am inspired by, I attended two different birthday parties for two different women who were turning 100 and were still activists on their 100th birthday. Those were 3 years apart. They were friends with each other. One of them actually 6 months after that came to one of the talkbacks I did from my immigration justice work. We had just been observing at the horrible detention camp for migrant teens in Florida that we got shut down. This 100-and-a-half-year-old woman came to listen to that. And she was working on a personal climate assessment at the time of her death that people could use to figure out their carbon footprint.
That's so inspiring. And once again, proving that we are never done in life, no matter what your age is or what you've been through or what your experience is, you are never done. We are always in a role of creating and figuring things out and just, making the world a better place. So no matter what your age, your demographic, your experience, you do have the power to be the change in the world that we want to see. And with that said, Shel, thank you so much for being on the podcast. It has been delightful to talk to you. And I really can't wait to follow you and see what you're up to next. And also, I'm going to go get that Guerrilla Marketing book because that is so interesting to me.
Great.
Thanks for listening to the Wow Party Podcast. If you're an entrepreneur or professional who would like to be on this podcast, please visit boomtownmarketing.com and click on podcast. We believe that every business has the potential to change the world for good, and we want to support our community to help make the world more ethical, compassionate, and sustainable for all future generations to come. And if you're looking to build your business, no matter what level you're at now, request your free marketing consultation at boomtownmarketing.com and click Get Started.